You're live.
Hey, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm joined by my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Misty Winston. Our very special guest this morning is our buddy Sam Carliner. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I may not be. Before we get to all of this and before we talk about just the absolute craziness that we live in, let me run through the numbers as they stand on January 30th, 2021. Today marks 3,703 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. It's been 658 days since the Wikileaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. It's been 24 days since District Judge Vanessa Baratzer, concierge to the U.S. State Department, denied Julian Assange bail after ordering his release 48 hours prior. 1,327 days of federal incarceration for Reality Winner, which is just brutal at this point, for further poking holes in Russiagate, essentially. 323 days that Chelsea Manning has been out of the Alexandria Detention Center. She is streaming on Twitch. Go check her out if you want to talk to AOC. 74 days in a halfway house for Jeremy Hammond, who, look, man, I don't know how long he's got to be at this halfway house crap. I'm super glad that he's out of prison. But I've known way too many people who have been put in a halfway house kind of program after that. And it's a testament to his character and his commitment to, not being a guest of the state anymore, that he's been able to get through this, because those are designed to make you screw up. Yeah, I really do. I hope he gets out of that suit. I do. At any rate, if this gets to Jeremy Hammond, we got your back, dude. We do. With that, Sam, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Heck yeah, thank you for coming up or over, or out, or down. I can't remember which down from New Jersey. To be a part of our events there at the beginning of the month, which, as we were talking about before the show, seemed like they were like 3 or 5 or 12 years ago. When in fact they were 26 days.
And we were all so happy then for like a day.
I was incredibly confused too. I just want to make that perfectly clear. Like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was happy as much as it was just like complete bafflement and
I would say that's what counts for happy these days.
Okay, that's fair.
This feeling is so foreign, I can't really process it. I'm utterly confused. Oh, you're having a good time. You're enjoying the moment. That's what you're doing. Wait, what? I'm sorry. You're gonna have to explain that again, because this is an utterly new feeling, and I can't wrap my head around it yet.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went down. Yeah, I would agree. It was an interesting time in DC for sure. But yeah, Sam, thanks for coming on, man. We love you. We love your work. So it's good to finally have you on a vigil.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love the vigils, so it's good to finally be on one of them. I was saying before, like, it's weird because you've had so many cool guests, and then I'm here with my sweatshirt and bad lighting, and but I feel like we'll make the most of it.
Yo, dude, I did Danny Scher's Fortress on a Hill. I did Fortress on a Hill. I got booked the week after they had Oliver Stone on, and I was like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!"
So weird.
No, dude, no.
It's really weird.
Don't make me follow. You're mean, Danny. That's not nice.
Didn't they have Glory on Fault Lines, and then like following Glory was Vanessa Beeley, and she was like, "What the hell is going on?"
They had Beeley on first.
Oh, okay.
And then they had Glory on.
Yeah.
And Beeley's like, I don't even know if I could. Never mind.
Well, I'm willing into existence that this means that, like, whatever great guest you've been trying to book and haven't gotten a hold of will get back to you this week, and they'll follow me, and the pattern will continue.
Yeah, nice. I like that. I like that attitude. I feel the same way though, Sam. Like I host this show and sometimes I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? What am I doing here? This is Bill Binney. What am I doing here?
Yeah. See, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, look, dude, in a according to the marketing of this country, right? According to the country's own marketing, we are all equal under the eyes of the law and the Constitution. So I have every right under the sun to be in the same room with whomever, period. I have every right under the sun to ask them the questions that I feel like are important. And they have every right to not answer, but I have every right to hold them accountable.
Can you rub some of that on me? Because I suffer from a severe case of imposter syndrome.
I will. They come in cartridges now. It's not a rub.
Okay.
But I can send you some.
Send me some. Yes, do that.
Yeah. All joking aside, man, I really do recommend microdosing psilocybin to help you with anxiety or depression or any of that shit. Like, go study on it.
Yeah, it's legit.
Or, multiple years of history. And I'm not saying like go talk to God every day.
Right.
But
just have a visit with your shadow, like Nico says.
Yeah, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Right.
Straight up.
I still want to do an interview. I want to do an interview with Nico's shadow. Can we do that? I think that would be an interesting conversation.
You got to piss off his wife and then get her on the show.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet she's feisty.
I guarantee you.
Usually tiny people are very feisty, and she's very tiny.
I feel like he's tall though.
He is tall. Like he's like probably 6'1", 6'2", probably.
That would be
she's very small.
In them velvet slippers, he's 6 foot and 1/2 inch.
Yeah.
Just want to make that perfectly clear. Depends on the shoe. Oh. Velvet slippers, he's a little shorter.
Yeah.
Come at me, Nico.
I love you, Nico. And Susie. Love her too.
So, Sam, you were there with us during the time where we were celebrating the fact that we had a no extradition ruling. A few days later, the judge, in the same breath, essentially denied Julian bail. And then we have the U.S. initiating the appeals process at like the very last second, giving themselves ample time now to file whatever else they need. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were, like up to this point of the situation about what Julian's gone through, but also about how the judges presented the case.
I mean, I'll start with how the judge has presented the case, which, I mean, I can't imagine I'm going to say anything that hasn't already been said by much better people. But
that's been the show. Thanks everyone for coming out today. We'll see you Tuesday.
I mean, yeah, well, no, it's just bullshit. Like, it really is the, and I think I was saying even like the day of the celebration where it's like, I totally feel like I mean, obviously there's like the personal gain of like, she just doesn't want to be the person who extradited him, but she's totally fine, like keeping him in prison, handing him off to someone else to like make the call. But my theory has been that there's that snobby Britishness to it, where it's like they got so much attention for their prison system, for how horrible it is. I mean, I feel like everyone was making the comparison. It's like, oh, I thought British prison systems were supposed to be better, but no, it turns out they're also horrible and abusive. And I mean, this is probably like maybe a bit of like a grasping at straws thing, but I really do feel like part of it has got to be that like British people just want to maintain even like half an ounce of credibility over the US by claiming that they're still somewhat better than us. And the bare minimum means we won't extradite him. We'll just send him to the appeals court and let them figure it out. Like I don't know. I also am just biased. I really hate British people. I'm sorry to any British people who are watching.
The argument that the prosecution made to Vanessa Baratzer about conditions of prisons were that, and even in their own, like, even in the prosecution bundles, this argument was presented that because British prisons are such a rat infested death trap hellhole, we've got to extradite Julian Assange, because U.S. prisons it's a country club. They have arts and crafts and colored TVs and probably dodgeball, and who knows, maybe there's a petting zoo. Like we just don't know, because we're not, us in the prosecution, we're not allowed behind the golden gilded walls of ADX Supermax. So we're just going to assume it's a paradise. And then to have that flip 180 degrees exactly to U.S. prisons are such a notorious shithole that I can't do this. I can't bring him there. He's going to have to stay in the Guantanamo Bay of the United States with no charges and no bail indefinitely, while the U.S. files meritless appeal after meritless appeal, because otherwise we'd have to do the right thing. I don't know. I mean, it's so this stasis, I think, was the goal out of this whole period. Like, just ineffectiveness, suspended animation, off the table.
Well, they just want to drag it out. If they drag it out, then it's we've said it a million times. Process as punishment. They're trying to tear him down piece by piece, little by little. They also want to do this as quietly as possible. So I think that, with the extradition ruling, obviously people were paying attention on that day. I mean, not as many people as I would have liked to have been paying attention, but people were paying attention. And now, as we, go into this appeals process, people are going to, we already see it. Nobody's talking about it again. Nobody cares. And so, the more that they can divert attention away from it, the better, because if they can do this in quiet and in silence and in the dark, it's much easier for them, because there won't be any pushback. So I think that's a big part of it, is just being able to distract, get people paying attention to something else, and then they can do whatever they need to do. But they are going to try to drag this out for as long as they can. And I have no idea how the appeals process works, or if they're limited to the number of appeals that they can put in. I need to, try to figure that out. Do you guys have any idea how that works? Do you know if there's like a certain number of, I know that this goes up to a higher court. So does it then go up to a higher court, and then a higher court? Like, how many times?
The U.S. can file more or less like an indefinite amount of appeals to the extradition, as long as they can find a shred of legal precedent to argue an obscure aspect of either mental health or prison conditions. They can file meritless appeal after meritless appeal after meritless appeal. And if they don't take up the appeal, then Julian's legal team can't reapply for bail, because they've got to be able to petition a new court and a new judge or a new panel of judges. So if the court itself doesn't meet, they're going to have a much harder time applying for bail. So there's now it's entirely in the hands of a yet to be impaneled set of magistrates.
Right. Now, I have a question too, because yesterday Rebecca Vincent got a question asking for updates on the Assange case, which she, very nicely put out a brief tweet with some of the updates. And then Kevin Gosztola tweeted in response to her that yesterday, January 29th, was the 2-week deadline for the U.S. Justice Department to file what they consider grounds for an appeal. So does anybody know if they have submitted that, or what? Did they get an extension due to the administration change? Have we heard anything specific on that? Because Gostola seems like he didn't really know at the time, and I forgot to ask him this morning. Tweet at him and ask him this morning.
No, I'm gonna ask Deepa right now.
Somebody, I don't know this person, so I didn't know to take it seriously or not, but somebody commented under that it appears to have been extended to February 15th. Don't ask me how. So that doesn't seem like entirely solid information. But I'm just curious
too, but I don't know where.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they actually did submit what they consider to be grounds for appeal, if it was accepted or if they got an extension. Because it was the 2-week deadline yesterday. So where do we stand? I'm just kind of curious for myself, like, where do we stand right now? And who do I need to bother? Who do I need to focus my energies on?
So I've come to several realizations, and I guess I had these realizations all along. It's just I was waiting for them to bear themselves out into 3 dimensions, Yeah. We are never getting invited into the rooms where most of the decisions that affect our lives are made, right? Never gonna happen. And in a micro sense, in the world of activism, in the world of Assange activism, the same also applies. We are never going to be involved where well-scrubbed, well-heeled people are allowed to make these conversations and decisions about how activism is supposed to be done. That's never going to happen. So I'm here for people, right? I'm here to get people together, to shed political ideology, to have a post-partisan conversation and organization. And I want that to be, a veritable army of people, for sure. So that when our betters decide where they want to point us, we've already been there for months waiting for them to fucking come around.
Right.
So I don't know what happens above me.
I don't give a shit about that.
Huh? Yeah. That's like, I think that overall awareness and education campaigns with the general public is how we're going to be most effective. And obviously, like, taking 5 minutes to shoot off a letter to a politician that's not going to see it, is something we can all do.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if they come en masse, like, yeah, maybe they won't see my one letter, but if 100 letters come in and they all say free Assange on the envelope, that's they'll see that. I mean, even if it's just, some intern somewhere opening mail, that person is going to see it. Yeah. And they're going to start to question, like, why are all these letters coming in? Like, what's this free Assange thing about? And that's all we can do, you guys. Like, I mean, there's a part of me that makes feel kind of like helpless and hopeless. Like, shit, all I can do is write letters. But shit, I can write letters. Like, I can do that. I can send emails. I can make phone calls. I can put out tweets. I can hang up signs in my neighborhood. I can make the little business cards I told you about that I've been making to shove into different things when I'm at the store or whatever. Everybody can do fucking something. Make some stickers and go stick them on shit. Like, you can do something. I mean, you don't have to. What's that?
Oh, what I can say is, like, one of my senators is Bob Menendez, an awful, horrible person on the Foreign Relations Committee. He doesn't give a shit about Assange. But I will say, I called his office, and his I guess the office person was like one of the most friendly customer service people like I've ever talked to, surprisingly, working for Bob Menendez. So I don't know if me telling them, hey, can you talk to my senator that I want him to pardon Assange, they were chirpy about it. So I'm good. I do think you have a point where it's like, I'm not expecting Bob Menendez is ever going to.
But the person you talk to might think.
I to believe people who are just like casually involved in politics, that actually could have an impact. That could get.
Yes. And that's what I've been saying all along. I cannot tell you, every time I tweet at AOC or Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, somebody will tweet underneath of it, oh my God, they're not going to do it. And I'm like, I fucking know that. Are you kidding me? This is not my first rodeo. I know that. But if I'm tweeting at them publicly, these are people with huge platforms, millions of followers. If I tweet at them about this, then somebody else is going to see it. And if that somebody else then starts to pay attention to the Free Assange movement, that's a win for me. So shut the fuck up. I know that the squad's not going to say anything. I know that. Like, I get it. This is what I do. I know.
I'm friends with a lot of squad supporters because like everyone my age, for the most part, still likes the squad to some extent. I'm working on changing that a little bit maybe, but I mean, that's the case. Like, people my age love the squad, but what I can give is that so many people who still do support the squad, at least for my age group, will say, like, if there is a valid or like the most valid criticism of the squad is that they have not talked about Assange. Like, these are people who would, I think, absolutely hate if someone tried to primary AOC, but will still flat out say, like, it is genuinely like a really, really bad thing that she and the others do not talk about Assange and do not support Assange. So I do think that, yes, like, you're not gonna get them because that would affect their careers. You're not gonna get them to talk about Assange. But I do think that is such a genuinely possible area to move people who may be more reformist into really understanding, like, no, these power dynamics are pretty solid and we're gonna need to be way more vocal against them if we want to get anything meaningful to happen. So I mean, that applies, one, to getting a pardon, but then I also think you can apply it to like a million other things. I would say mainly foreign policy is the main one we really need to work on, but which I'd say also Assange is sort of like part of the larger foreign policy conversation.
Absolutely. But I think, people need to stop thinking that these politicians are going to save you anyway. This isn't about them. This is about us coming together in a huge group and yelling at them about something until they make it happen. And that's what a public pressure campaign is. And that's what we do here. And that's, that is, it's, again, like Steve said, we're not in like the room. We're not in the room. We're not in the Assange, legal team room where we can put our 2 cents in, or and we're not qualified for that anyway. I'm not a lawyer. I don't fucking know, especially with British law. But, there are things that we can do, should be doing. And it's easy stuff, like Steve said, it takes 5 minutes to write a letter. It takes 30 seconds to put out a tweet. Print off some flyers and go hang them up. That might take you, a couple hours or whatever. This isn't hard stuff. So it's stuff that anybody can get involved in. There's no like real cost to it. You might have to buy some stamps and some envelopes or maybe some paper and ink or whatever. But for the most part, it's not cost exclusive. Like, it's not super expensive. These are easy things that everybody can do. And we should be doing them. It's, super simple, super basic. And this week we're writing to Assange. So please, for the love of God, participate. I spoke to Stella. I think he needs letters. She didn't say like specifically he's in a really bad place, but I can just imagine that he's in a really bad place. So yeah, we're going to write to Assange. So please participate in that. If you can, that would be nice.
I have, my mom got me a free Assange hat for Christmas. And as much as I want to wear it, I'm not going anywhere. I have a friend who is a journalism major at the school that I complain about all the time. She's this year taking the not Keystone, whatever the term is, like the like big cable news class, which I could spend 5 hours complaining about. I'm lending her my hat, and every Zoom call, the professors who fucking hate Julian Assange are going to have to put up with her hashtag free Assange on the screen for all to see. So it really is like stuff like that. And I always say, like, people my age have been way less susceptible to Assange propaganda because we weren't around during most of it. Like, obviously we've heard slander of him, but it's been in much smaller dosages. So I really do think that like this is a thing that like late millennials and Zoomers can easily get behind. I just think usually there's a bit of a generational separation where a lot of the more political people that, you know, people my age talk to don't really mention Assange as much. So I feel like that's also if anyone's watching, talk to your children, talk to the young people, because it's I think we're way more likely to support him.
Yeah, and I think actually Glenn Greenwald talked about this on Jimmy Dore a little bit the other day when he was talking about how, you know, in 2010 when Assange and WikiLeaks really first blew up, and like this whole revolutionary journalism, like this crazy like idea, and immediately the conversation shifted to, oh, well, Assange is an asshole. And Glenn Greenwald said, who gives a fuck? But that was very effective in 2010. And, you know, it doesn't matter if he's an asshole. It's irrelevant. I don't know him. I've never met him. And I always find it interesting when people are like, he's an asshole. You've never met him. How do you know if he's an asshole? I don't know. Does he come across kind of abrasive? Yeah, but he's also autistic. So, you know, that happens. But, you know, that's been very effective. But Sam's right. Like that hasn't been as effective on, you know, Zoomers or younger millennials like that, because they didn't really, they were little when that was all going down, you know? So it's
about Chelsea Manning because she's trans, and I have a lot of friends who are like LGBTQ+, and then it was only like at least like 2 years later where I was like, oh, Chelsea Manning was connected to like WikiLeaks and Assange and had a relationship there, and that's how she became to be a thing. So it really is like a completely different conversation as you get younger.
I think when we interviewed Juan, he said that his documentary was kind of aimed towards that demographic, like people who have never heard about Julian Assange, or they were really young when they heard about Julian Assange, or they had no idea what was happening or whatever, and they just kind of have vaguely grown up like hearing the name but not really knowing anything about him. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely something that we need. People keep telling me to get on TikTok. Because there's like, you know, Zoomers and millennials on TikTok, and they're very like open and like ready for information and stuff. And I'm going to have my 10-year-old teach me how to do TikTok, because I don't fucking know how to do TikTok.
When Rania Khalek can do a crossover.
Yeah, she's good on TikTok. She does good stuff.
So good,
I just got to figure it out. And I hate doing that stuff. Like
TikTok's weird, man. Their algorithm for what they choose to show you is just creepy.
Apparently it's gotten worse. Like before, apparently it used to be really easy to like go viral and get like a ton of views, and now it's different. And
oh, you mean like YouTube back in the day?
Right. Yeah, they ruined that too. So, you know.
Juan's documentary, which everyone should watch, and then watch
everyone
again,
should.
and then share with all of your friends. We did the teach-ins with the same sort of like anybody at any point in WikiLeaks history can watch this, take something of value from it, but people who are totally unfamiliar with it will be able to get brought up to speed in a relatively short amount of time. And I feel like we should get back to producing some more of those, and to try and take them live, to try and do them in a room in front of people, because we're getting a little bit more relaxed in terms of lockdown right now, and activists, no matter what it is you're doing, need to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Like I really don't care what cause it is you're advocating for. Take advantage of the fact that there are lightened COVID restrictions going on right now, if there are in your state or in your country or whatever, and if not, fucking violate them.
There's if you actually subscribe to RT and Teleser, you see fucking massive global protests against lockdowns everywhere. Like, it's crazy how much of the United States just lays down.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, actually. I mean, like in the Netherlands, they don't play, man. They're not playing around. And listen, please don't come at me about how I'm being irresponsible and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. This is not even about keeping people safe anymore. This is 100% about keeping you under control. I mean, come on. when the politicians are having birthday parties and they're flying to Maui and they're doing all this stuff like nothing's happening.
Inauguration happened.
Yeah.
And also that, what is it? Biden is now going to be bringing back schools, which is the same thing that everyone complained about Trump doing. But then the teachers unions are like cheering on Biden for doing it, which I've always said Biden would have done the same exact thing Trump did, except maybe he would have talked about masks more. But other than that, like policy wise, it would have been the same thing. And now we're seeing it, but because it's him, no one cares.
Yes, and it's incredibly frustrating because it couldn't be more obvious that this really has nothing to do with keeping people safe. If it did, they would be paying everybody to stay home. They would be shutting down the schools. They would be making sure everybody had access to internet so that kids could learn online. There are things that they could do right now today to make that happen, and they're not doing it, and that's because it's really not about keeping people safe. It's really not.
It's about taking our rights, and it's highlighted best in Julian's case, right? So you have... Since after the February hearing, you've had all the courtrooms locked down, where you have such limited access for journalists to get in. The use of the cloud video platform, which was better than the phone system, which they previously had, but still not open to the public for viewing, like the public gallery was or is supposed to be in the courtroom. So it's losing those basic things to where you couldn't even get Rebecca Vincent in a meaningful, reasonable amount of time during the hearings that just happened in January.
Yeah, they were shutting out the NGOs.
She was listed in as a family member to be able to get access to court, and they still refused her and made her stand in line.
Yeah, legal observers, and they were all kept out, like fought against. I mean, we all saw it when the extradition ruling came down. The guy who was on our live feed trying to like film for us was being chased by cops through the streets. I mean, being harassed, literally being chased. It's all on our show, and it was intense, unbelievably intense. And he's like, "Oh well, didn't he first say I'm exercising or something?" It's cracking me up. I'm exercising, and then he was like, "I'm a journalist."
Yeah, he's with Reporters Without Borders with headphones.
He was holding place for Reporters Without Borders from the first time in February all the way through, and had volunteered basically to be like, yes, if you are trying to get into the courtroom, I will show up at 4:00 in the morning for you, and I will wait in line, and I will make sure that you can get in because it's criminal that you're not invited anyway. And that was his function. He's not an employee of Reporters Without Borders. He's a volunteer, which makes what he was doing even freaking cooler.
Yeah, very cool people. They are all very cool people. That whole UK crew was amazing. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they were, excluding NGOs and legal observers, and, that journalists Craig Murray couldn't get in. He had to say he was a family member, and the video platform, while better, was still... Huh?
Uncle Red Nose.
Oh. But the video platform, while better than the phone, was still clunky. They still, Gastola still had trouble getting in on certain days, and it was very weird and awkward, and it's just ridiculous. And you're right, Andrew, that's a huge example of how this has been used to take rights away and to keep things in the dark. And I don't think it could be more obvious at this point. I'm all about wanting to keep people safe and healthy. I genuinely am. To me, though, it's very clear that that's not what this is all about.
Well, they would compensate workers if that's what it was all about, but they're not going to do that.
Right. Hey, Sam, for the edification of our audience, and I saw this earlier from our resident wizard, Rob Juno, who is always interested in finding out how people came to support Julian Assange and came to be a part of this movement. Will you let us know how you got involved with this, because you're a young man, and Rob is not, and I am somewhere in between. So it always is interesting to know how people get on board with this, because it helps us figure out how we can reach out to just different sections of humanity.
Yeah. So I would say that I don't know if I'm representative of like everyone my age, because I had an obscenely anti-war stance before I had an ideology.
Nobody's asking you to be the arbiter of your generation.
All right,
Yeah.
good. All right, yeah.
Just how did Sam get involved?
All right, so I was very anti-war for as long as I can remember, and so it was, and I didn't connect that to Assange or WikiLeaks until it was when he was arrested from the Ecuadorian embassy, because that was when it was big in the news, and at that point I had still fallen for some of the smears against him. I was in a very as I've said, like establishment type of journalism school, where Assange was not considered a journalist. I had not seen any debunking of the claim that he was a rapist, so I fell for that originally too. I think those were the main two, but even when I was still in the mindset of like, okay, like Assange necessarily isn't a good person or whatever, it still was, I guess, obvious to me that it's like, this isn't about him. This is about trying to make the First Amendment illegal. So I was still very too shy personally, and also because of the smears, to talk about it one-on-one to people. So I printed out like a bunch of flyers and put them throughout the comm school, basically saying free Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, talking about how it was an attack on free speech. And I don't remember exactly how I got like really invested in it, but I think just over time realizing how not obvious it was to people that this was such a threat in a journalism school definitely played into it. Like I think before I wouldn't have focused on this as much. I would have focused on specific like ending wars. Also, I was really big into incarceration in the US and rights for prisoners. And I think just the more I realized that like no one, especially the people who will be most affected by this, were talking about this, the more I just started to prioritize it over other concerns that usually would have taken precedent for me. And I have credited Misty multiple times, but it really was the episode of Facts on the Ground that she and Jesse did, where they had Taylor and Mohammed on, and I don't remember what specifically it was that was said, or if it was just the general vibe of the episode, but that was where it really clicked for me. It's like why on earth would I believe the smears about Assange personally when it's so clear that this whole trial has been organized by like the most powerful people? So I would say that it was the being in an environment where it was just so apparent that everything I'm being taught is good for free speech is being violated and no one seems to care, I think really made me cut away from sort of the establishment take on journalism faster than I otherwise would have. And then it was specifically like when the trial started where I started being like, okay, I need to start talking about this more, and I need to start being way more vocal about it, not just like sort of virtual or like half talking about it. So I would say that was sort of my process. I don't know if that answered your question, but it was sort of a slow build up over time until eventually it just clicked.
It
What do you
satisfied
think of-
Rob, and that's really all
That's really all that matters. If Rob's happy, we're all happy.
To piggyback on it, though, what do you think a good way would be to reach the academia students in journalism about this issue? Because
Sammy's trying, man. That's
I
his whole
meant,
purpose in life. Way to introduce that, Andrew.
Yeah.
Well done, man. Well
Good
done.
transition,
Well
my
done.
friend. Yeah. Because Sam has done great work on this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we talked about it before multiple times on this show, and his mom. Hi, Mom. But yeah,
She'll watch this later, and I'm sure she says hi back.
I'm sure she will. I love your mom. But yeah, talk to us about like the work that you've done. And this is like, he just took initiative. I didn't tell him to do it. Steve didn't tell him to do it. Nobody told him to do it. He just did it. So yeah, tell us about all the stuff that you've done so far.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it started with I would like print out little flyers, and I really wish that I still had them saved, because it did not look at all professional. It was like a birthday cake. Like I got as like a birthday party invitation format. So I was like, okay, like if people just see Assange, they're gonna like look away or throw these out immediately. But if it looks like just a little birthday cake with confetti and it says free Assange on it, they're more likely to pick it up. So that was my first, and that was still when I believed a lot of the smears about him and was like shy to talk about it. But I just everywhere, all over every table and in people's offices and stuff. And I think for the most part, let me see, what was it? I think I talked to people about it a little bit, but I think it was specifically like when the trial started, where I started being like, okay, I really need to like talk to people about this. And what I can do is I can talk to people my age about it. I know a lot of people who are just entering journalism. I can try to get them to talk about it. So I did a 3-part series, which is sort of to serve as an intro for people who don't really know a lot about it. Misty is featured in one of those episodes. So I talked to one of the members of NYC Free Assange, and he talks about sort of the background of, I feel bad because I don't remember his name.
Deha?
Kavanaugh? Not to be confused with the, so bad because I don't remember.
Look, man, it's a small island, but there's a lot of Kavanaughs. We're not going to relate all of them.
Yeah. But it was a cool Kavanaugh. So he talked about it. And that sort of serves as like a intro to like what's happened, like what's the background of WikiLeaks, what have they done, why are they so hated. Then I got Kevin Pistola to talk about the trial itself. That was when he was reporting on it, and just really one of like the nicest people I have ever been able to talk to. I emailed him like the first day that he had a break, and like 2 minutes later he was like, yeah, I can do today. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then Misty does like the introduction to like, here's what you as an individual person can do to try to spread it. So that was sort of my first attempt to like really grapple with it. And I noticed that like a lot of people who I didn't expect would actually be that interested, like were interested. I mean, I the first episode, when it wasn't originally doing too well, like listener wise, so I messaged like every single person who was following my podcast account, and those are all student journalists. Like those, for the most part, they were people I met as classmates, and I messaged them. I was like, hey, can you share this episode and promote it? And like every single one of them was like, yeah. I don't know that they supported WikiLeaks or Assange necessarily, but they clearly like didn't mind it enough that they were choosing not to boost it. Like they boosted it. And so from there, I really had the idea that like, okay, classmates or people my age could maybe be more swayed. So I compiled a list of like, God, I forget the exact number. I think it was 700, 900 school administrations to be like, hey, are you going to talk about this with your students? Are you maybe going to release a statement? And surprise, surprise, none of the administrations got back to me. Some did. I had one, I'll be petty. Rowan University, I will just say that their director of journalism thinks that Julian Assange is in no way a journalist, her exact words, and that she is very familiar with the trial and has been paying attention and will not be making any statement on it. She has no intention to. So if anyone wants a school to specifically focus their efforts on recruiting students to the cause, Rowan University in New Jersey is a really good one to look at. That was like the only response I got, was the negative one from their director of journalism. So that was her name
isn't Chloe, is it?
I don't think it is actually.
It's a running joke.
Yeah.
There's a woman with a roundly unpronounceable last name named Chloe that works for the BBC. She's BBC
She's
4
terrible.
Radio. And she's running from Vanessa Beeley's emails right now.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if she's capable of sprinting. She does look spry. I've seen a couple of pictures. So probably physically running.
She shouldn't start shit she can't finish. Like, maybe don't smear Vanessa Beeley.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I should announce this right now because I still got to scramble for a guest. But Vanessa has scheduled with me. Her internet package in Syria is up. She's got to wait till the first of the month before she gets new internets again. So I will be looking for an emergency guest for tomorrow. But Vanessa will be on soon, very soon. But Rowan University, and so look, it's interesting to hear this from you, Sam, because Taylor Hudak, as a master's candidate, received phenomenal pushback from the panel that was going to hear her presentation and determine whether or not she was going to get her master's degree. And she had to fight with these guys tooth and nail to get them not only to recognize WikiLeaks, but like independent media in general. And I think that it's so counterproductive and so antithetical to what higher education is supposed to be based on their own marketing to set these parameters of, we have determined what is the media. We in academia decided what the media is. And we've decided what counts as journalism and what counts as reporting, even though we've told you all that reporting is walking out the door and asking people what they see. It gives you kind of, I don't know, a upfront three-dimensional perspective of what gatekeeping looks like.
Well, it's really more nefarious than just the journalism schools.
I can take it further.
Yeah, it's
Please,
the
by all
establishment.
means do. I don't say this shit so that it's the end all and be all. I say
Right.
it so
No,
that
but
we
I
can
mean,
have
just look at what they're
a
doing.
broader
Look at what they're doing right now. I mean, AOC is trying to get Jimmy Dore deplatformed by saying that he's violent, and they're complaining. The guy on, what was it, CNN? I forget his name, but the stupid fucking guy who was like, we need to bring everybody back into the mainstream. Fuck you, dude. Like, no, we don't. The mainstream media is an absolute abject failure. It is lying to people daily. It is absolute state propaganda. But that's what they're doing. That's
They're
how
trying to blame it all on our buddy Burmis too. Loose change started Q. That's the meme now coming out of mainstream media. Jason Burmis and Dylan Avery are personally responsible for the QAnon psyop, which we all know was a freaking psyop.
Anybody with a brain knew it was a psyop
because of loose change. So, I mean, this is dangerous. This is seriously dangerous.
But that's what they want. This is what they want. This is the goal. They want to shut independent media down. This has been the goal ever since independent media became a thing and has started to grow. The guy said it on CNN. You have people who are on YouTube who get more viewers than CNN. Well, that's good. CNN is pure propaganda. That should be the way that it is. Like I don't need a mom or a dad to predict me.
Literally was funded on making the Gulf War entertaining. Like that's not editorializing or whatever. That is, they literally it's public knowledge. Their whole reason they rose to prominence was because they had a really good model of getting people to watch coverage of the Gulf War, because they worked with the government to make it look like an action movie. It blows my mind that you can consider them a credible, objective news outlet when they don't even hide that that's how they started. But I can also say that cable news, the amount of control they have over college campuses is terrifying. They are every internship program, and that is a thing where I try to go after, the outlets, but part of me also always feels bad for people my age, because the only way that they can get paid and potentially get an audience usually is by taking a cable news internship. There are no like the Gray Zone does not have, to my knowledge, internships. That's not to knock the Gray Zone. That is, they don't have the resources to hire people who are interested in starting out in journalism. And I don't think that I would have like caved in taking an internship at like MSNBC or Fox if I could have. But I also don't know how much effort how much time and energy I'd have to put into independent journalism if I wasn't really fortunate enough to have a family that's fine, like supporting me in trying to be independent. So I think that's not to say that we should just like be like, oh yeah, like do what you got to do, go to CNN, MSNBC or whatever. But I do think there needs to be, and I have no clue, this is the $1 million question, but I think there needs to be more work into like, how do we keep monopolized media companies from being literally able to buy up any news outlet they want, and then the only way that people who are like in debt or first generation Americans who want to do journalism, or like working class people who want to do journalism, like how can it be made more accessible that you can cover things and not die of starvation without having to sell your soul? I feel like, and that is the thing that I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to get schools to not rely on partnerships with cable outlets for all of their funding and all of their classes and resources, because I do think it's the responsibility of like people who are facilitating people who are genuinely young people who are genuinely interested in journalism and could be genuinely great independent journalists, are basically being told you will just die of, you will not have money or income if you hold on to your values. And I think that is a very powerful like thing to hear when you're hearing it from like the people who are supposed to be like know everything about the industry and how it works. And over time it gets eroded. I think we do need more people on not necessarily college campuses, because I don't like this idea that like you have to have a degree to do journalism, but like in spaces where young people are getting interested in journalism, there need to be more people who can show people the independent route. Because I have like so many independent outlets that if I had not caved and created a Twitter account, I never would have heard of them. I didn't hear about most news outlets I follow until I went on Twitter and I had people who were just like, hey, check out this outlet. So I do think there really needs to be like some easier way to reach younger people with independent opportunities and ways to get involved and have it be easier and more accessible to go the independent route.
Well, if you look at, for example, the way Taylor's done it, Taylor Hudak, one of the former co-hosts of the show, started out in journalism school, but instead of trying to get those big internships, covered real issues in journalism school, and then became an independent journalist. Works in the U.S., does crazy work, but covers Julian's case for the largest like activist YouTube channel in all of Germany. And just little things like, and makes more than enough money, I assume, to support herself and live the life that makes her happy going forward. So showing people things like that, where like you can take all these tools that you learned in journalism school, but why aren't you starting out with your own channel, with your own Patreon or GoFundMe's or what have you, while you're going through it? So you don't have to be a slave to the CNN internships. You can learn all of these art skills and techniques while building your own platform.
So here's the thing that we have to study, and I agree with you 100%, my friend. I do. But Taylor's arc was atypical.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
You know, and so I want to make that clear, lest people think, you know, oh, I can happen upon a gig like Activism Munich, because that's not necessarily how that's going to break. Like Activism Munich was a natural progression for Taylor, not for Andrew, not for Steve, not like that's not how that necessarily works. But you're not trying to be a journalist when you grow up,
Right.
and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I'm a little less, determined on becoming an anchor person type of
Well, and also building your own platform, building your own show from scratch is really hard. I mean, it's really difficult and there's cost involved. You have to get, a decent camera, and you have to have a decent microphone, and you have to have, there's lots of things that you need in order. And if you want to be an on the ground journalist, how are you going to fund that? How are you going to be able to fund yourself going to cover different stories in different places? That costs gas.
You go to Flint once and then you fundraise off of that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, some people are very good at the grift, but you'll have that. But if you want to be like a genuine independent journalist, it's hard to build a platform from scratch. It really is. I mean, I think I've been fortunate just with myself and Jesse's show that I had a pretty decent Twitter following that I could use to build up our show and to get people to subscribe and stuff. And even that, it's still slow going. I mean, we're still only at like 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. And I have 15,000 people to follow me on Twitter. So it's, it's not easy to build up an independent platform. And when you're a broke college kid who is now in debt up to your ears from paying for college, and most families don't have the luxury of Sam, who has a family who can, help him out when he needs it. Most people are poor, and so they can't afford, like their families can't afford to, help them and get them to a place where that they can, build up themselves, and because that takes time. And so, I mean, it's a really complicated problem. I don't know how to fix it because you're right. It is a monopoly. The cable news networks have a complete monopoly over what is news and what is journalism. And frankly, they're destroying the country. I mean,
So here's what I want to try and explore a little bit, and this is just exploration. I'm not trying to give a determined, a concrete answer about anything, or like to declare that this is the way forward. I want to have a broader conversation about this. So I'd like to explore how, in an era where the algorithm largely determines not only what is popular, but what is reality, how we can effectively communicate to people who only know the algorithm, the reality and the popularity determined by the algorithm. Like, how can we do that? Because I wanted to, since we started this whole thing, I wanted to be able to take it to college campuses. I wanted to be able to have these conversations in person if possible, because I honestly do believe that without individual face-to-face communication about this specific issue, we are at a serious disadvantage, because it's so complex, and it involves 15 years of trying to destroy the credibility, reputation, and life of an individual in an outlet. So you can't. It's significantly harder. It's not that you can't. It's that it's much, much harder to really get this information across in a way that affects an individual to the point to where they want to change their behavior and activate in this format. And I feel like doing that in person is critical. So if we could explore this, how we could better communicate to, that like college campuses in general, I think that would be valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that. I mean,
but we're not college kids.
No, I know. Neither is Sam anymore.
Yeah, I know, but he's got more recent experience with that than, say, my half semester or my half year at Purdue in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and like that, I really wish like that I had done more to try to talk in person when I was still in college, because I only started getting more vocal after everything went virtual. But I mean, one thing I could say is a lot of public campuses they can't kick you out. That is one thing where you may not be allowed in certain buildings, but a lot of schools, and that actually is a thing that a lot of colleges that are public, they won't talk about it. Like, I think even if they supported Assange technically, they won't talk about it because they are at risk of losing funding if they're the school that is taking a stance on Assange. Which I mean, you know me, I think that you should risk it anyways. I think it's worth it. But I also think that, yeah, like a lot of schools, you're not going to convince them to risk losing a chunk of their funding from the state by voicing support for one person, as important as that issue is. So one thing I will say is that public colleges, they're even less likely to talk about it, I think, than private colleges. But the benefit is that they have public campuses. If people just show up, talk to students outside of the, Montclair State University School of Communication and Media building, I think you could probably raise a lot of awareness there. Again, I don't know how easy it would be to get away with something like that during the lockdown. I think that, yeah, we may have to start, if it goes on, violating that more. But I mean, I plan on the next time I visit my campus, my former campus, to talk to some of the professors who I do think were really good. I'm going to be way more vocal about Assange. I'm definitely wearing my Free Assange hat. And I think that that's part of it, is that it really is like, there's so many groups. I mean, there's a million, military recruiters who just go to any public campus. You can't kick them out because it's a public campus. So I feel like if we got some Free Assange recruiters who just, if you have a local public campus, you can just show up there enough. I feel like that's a place to start. As far as like how to actually get it within the program of the school, that is a much different story. But yeah, no, I think that there's so many Assange supporters who will just show up on a street and they don't care if they're the only person there talking about it. I think that if that street is on a public college campus, that's a really good place to start. That's my personal take on it. And then how to take it further, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think our biggest hurdle right now is really just lockdowns. I mean, being able to hold in-person teach-ins is just not a thing that's happening right now. It's just not a thing that you can make happen right now.
If you're in a state that has a governor that has more relaxed views on lockdowns,
let us know.
Let us know, because I'll organize and hold a teach-in there.
Do a state tour of different public campuses throughout a state.
100%, like whatever it fucking takes, man. Because again, dude, I know that like I'm not going to be invited into anyone's club, right?
Mhm.
And one of the like just flat realities about activism is that there are always clubs and there are always cliques and there are always gatekeepers. So understanding this, I feel like I can be most effective at directly communicating to groups of people. So I am going to focus a significant portion of my energy into trying to make that happen and to making that an effective form of education and organizing. So yeah, dude, I'll move some fucking mountains to make this shit happen, and I'm incredibly serious about the St. Patrick's Day thing too. For over a year now, the Clovers for Assange thing has been circulating, and as we get closer to St. Patrick's Day, yes, it's hokey, right? I don't care. Like, I'll try corny for a minute and see if it works. But having gatherings on St. Patrick's Day for Julian Assange that are also awareness events, I think would be incredible. And I'd like to make that happen.
Well,
So
we just talked to Allie.
make that happen, please get a
We
hold
need
of
a
me.
circus. We need a circus. Like, we need to get creative. We need
Yeah.
to get, do things that are out of our comfort zone and do things that are maybe a little hokey. I mean, fuck it.
Yeah,
Who
dude,
cares?
having conversations with well-appointed and incredibly brilliant people is so fucking valuable but we aren't getting a freed Julian Assange out of that alone. We're not getting conversations about, we're not getting Julian free.
No, I mean, we just talked to
like,
Allie about the fact that we need to be more creative. Like, we need to do hokey things. We need to do, like she was talking about, having a circus. Let's make it a circus. That's
for
what we
that
get attention.
I'm for it. For it.
I have no shame, you guys. I'm ready. Let's do it.
I would like to be involved in this circus plan. I very much would love to participate in the circus.
I can't juggle, but I mean, I'm loud. Does that count? Can I just be loud?
Right. Yeah, and understand that I'm not volunteering to be a ring leader of the circus. I would like to be part of it.
Yeah, we don't need to.
But again, man, like decentralization, I'd rather not have this be a top-down thing.
No.
So,
No, we don't need a leader.
But if you're down to help and you'd like to help me organize, and you're in a state where there's a little bit more relaxed, free assembly rules right now, dude, reach out and we'll make it happen.
I also want to add, like, to students, because I also talked to a bunch of student newspapers to be like, hey, are you going to cover this? And their immediate thing, if they responded, usually had to nag them, was, yeah, we focus on news pertaining to the students. And it's like, this pertains to you, like, as one, your journalism students, but also every student, whatever their major, probably likes having a First Amendment right. So so I would say that if anyone watching this is a student or knows a student, if you, like, literally the first person you can think of who is a student, I'm not allowed to write opinion pieces in college newspapers. I'm pretty sure most school newspapers, if they get nagged enough, they can. If they're a student news organization or newspaper that decides, no, this isn't the type of thing we'd write about to a student at that school, just publicize the fact that this student newspaper isn't letting their students speak, because I think that student news organizations are technically a lot more free because it's supposed to be it's run by students, but the school typically has a lot of control and a lot of influence. So I think the more that students assert their own influence over these organizations, the better it can spread among young people. So yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, if you know someone who can get this out in a student news organization, I think that would be a big difference, because also every school newspaper, the only people usually who read it are parents of the students and people who work in the journalism department of that college. So if you want your faculty who hate Assange to be reading that you as a student care about this, that's a really good place to put it. So yeah, I don't know how to talk to maybe other groups, but I do think that, like, if we can get people just now getting into journalism to talk about this, even if maybe we do unfortunately experience a closing off of potential to free the man, I think if we can get enough young people to, like, have that seed planted very early on, it's only a matter of time before they get more aggressive about it. Sorry for my little role. That was
it's always funny to me when people are like, well, like, this isn't like you said, we write about stuff that just affects the students. I don't know that there's anything that affects more people than this issue. I mean, this literally affects all of us, every single person. People will try to excuse, like, David Sirota. Well, that isn't really what he writes about. I don't care if that's what he writes about. Like, this is the future of his profession. He should be writing about this. This isn't, like, just some hokey town fair or something that I'm asking him to come cover. This is the future of journalism, and he doesn't write about it. That's a problem. That should be a problem. Every journalist who cares about journalism should be talking about this. There's no excuse. There's
Well,
just
I would say that like you can take it a step further. I agree that like if you're a journalist, you should cover it, even if it's not like your main beat. You should cover it. But like it's also that excuse falls apart so badly in that even if you don't cover it, even if David Sirota like is like, I'm going to keep writing about the things I write about, it is so easy to retweet the people who write about it.
Yeah.
So if you can't even like retweet an article that you didn't write, but that raises awareness to it, I think that's not a case of like, no, this just isn't the type of thing they cover, or no. One. No,
and then he blocks people that ask him to cover it.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign, fam. That's not a good sign. That's not a journalist that I trust.
Yeah.
Nope. Not at all. I shouldn't have to. First of all, I shouldn't have to bully you into submission. Like I shouldn't even have to ask. Like it shouldn't even, it's so bizarre to me that this is a thing I have to beg people to talk about. It's I have trouble like wrapping my head around this all the time. But like I've said before, if you had told me 5 years ago that Sarah Palin was going to come out in defense of Julian Assange before Bernie Sanders, I would have been on the floor, rolling, laughter, like tears. I would have been crying. It would have been like, but here we are. This is the world we live in.
You have so many people who are like, yeah, like I don't want to speak to the Assange issue because it's hijacked by right-wing people. It's like at this point, it's basically, I think someone said to one of you guys, like it's a far-right dog whistle. It's like, no, that doesn't speak to how right the issue of freeing Assange is. That speaks to how horribly leftists are failing. Like if you're upset that the right is being more vocal about this issue, that doesn't mean be silent. That means yell louder than them.
The problem is there isn't a real left. Like there are a few of us, but for the most part,
Misty, you're wandering into enemies list categories.
I don't really give a shit. Every time they put me on a list, I gain a shit ton of followers. So bring it, fuckers. You just make me stronger.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm so tired of those. I am so tired of those assholes. I'm so tired of them calling me a fascist. I'm a fucking free speech activist, and I'm a fascist. Go fuck yourself.
Well, that's how you can tell. You're for free speech. That's how we know you're a fascist.
I didn't know fascists love free speech. This is new to me. Because see, I thought that fascists like to shut down free speech, and I must have that confused. I got it backwards. I'm sorry. That's so crazy. Oh, and I'm anti-war too. What the fuck is happening?
So I haven't got to say congratulations to Stephen Glory yet for making it onto the Jimmy Dore show with that cut of the interview of Reverend Annie.
Yeah.
I want to say that was the best interview you've ever done.
The people I'm talking about that I'm so sick of.
I didn't say a word in that interview. I didn't.
These people,
it was one of my better ones. It really was.
Yeah. No.
Kevin Castola told me months ago, months and months ago, and I have carried it with me like a fucking shield ever since. Do the work that nobody else is doing. Do it consistently, and whether or not you get an invitation to the cool kids table in indie media, they will have to use your work because you're the only one doing it that well and that consistently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, those are the same people, like the people, what pissed me off is one of these, boutique left, totally fake leftists. They're liberals, called Reverend Annie trash. Fucking trash. She's a former Black Panther, lifelong activist. And somebody
to this day still passes out food outside of her apartment.
Daily she does that.
Yes. And this is somebody who sits behind a keyboard all day and bitches about people doing the actual work. And that's what I'm talking about. Those people are not, people keep trying to tell me that it's infighting. Those people are not my friends. They're not allies of mine. They're not on my team. Like that. Are you kidding me? People calling me a fascist and calling Reverend Annie trash? No, those are not allies of mine. That's the problem is we don't have a, first of all, the left has been decimated. There aren't many of us left who are genuinely about leftist ideals. The people who proclaim to be left, are liberals. I mean, Steve calls them liberals with training wheels. They don't even think they have training wheels. They're liberals. Like they are,
Well, this round did. The training wheels came off from everyone who became a progressive in 2015 because Bernie Sanders ran for president.
yes.
And the people who stayed in that camp have had a little bit more than 4 years to get used to the bike, and now the training wheels are off, and you see it evidenced not just in the individual people, but in the talking points of their pet politicians. And oh god, dude, the AOC went on my old boss's show, Chris Hayes, and
to talk about Joe Biden being great. Yeah.
He just laughed. He knows how much I hate Chris Hayes.
Oh.
My dad is right across the counter from me, and he laughs because he hears Chris Hayes and he knows what that means to me.
Hey, Sam's dad, that guy fired me.
Yeah.
He fired
Steve.
Chris Hayes 13 years ago.
Yes.
Oh.
And I am a much better person for it.
Yeah.
I will say, if I can get things a little popping on this show and push back with a little optimism that represents how new I am to doing things, I mean, I will say that, like, I agree that if we're talking about the stances of, like, people, I think that I think a big difference between leftism and liberalism is how much you care about imperialism. If you can say that that is a back burner issue because it doesn't affect your material needs, one, morally, that's a liberal thing to say. But two, it's also just wrong, because I think anyone who knows even like 2 ounces of how imperialism works knows that it always impacts you directly. But where I would sort of say is that I personally, and again, I'm young, I'm new, who knows if I'm just misguided, but I personally am so optimistic that leftism can be brought out of people who are currently not maintaining those stances, just because, like, I was being, I feel like I consider it, like, since America has been, as we've said, so defeated any form of leftism for decades now, and has been so time and again influenced into this idea that the only way that change happens is through electoralism and working with the system. I do feel like, to me, it still feels like somewhat of a miracle that you even have people being as left as they are. Like, whether they're liberal for the global standard of what leftism is, I also feel like when you consider that America is so uniquely shifted to the right and has had such effective propaganda to keep people right, I personally still think that it is possible that, like, we've only had, 4 years of people being politicized by the Bernie Sanders movement. I'd say campaign, not movement, but like, I feel like when you consider it's only been like 4 years, and we've had decades of people saying, like, no, even this is way too radical. I personally am still hoping that, like, it's going to take an annoyingly obscenely amount of time to get people a way to break from Bernie, to break from the squad and move left. But I am still at least hopeful that, like, it can be done, and that especially, again, that younger people who this is all they've ever encountered with politics.
We're in an era where left and right only exist on TV, where people in the streets, they may say I'm a leftist or I'm a right winger, but that's all political illusion, to where you have left-wing groups chanting my body, my choice, and right-wing groups chanting my body, my choice. So what it really comes down to, at least I think as a monument to victory, is the way we use language. Because, for example, the idea of seize the means of production, right? That's a really left-wing, scary socialist term. But if you say it in a way, this is actually something that the Pirate Party did with great effect in Iceland and across Europe. If you say words like that in a way that mean the same thing but represent a different group's ideology, then you can have a lot of success. Like,
it really is all about messaging. And I talk about this all the time on Twitter. When I tweet at right-wing people, you have to change your language. You have to use words like freedom and patriot and civil liberties and rights, and because that's what they are attracted to. That's what they care about. And so it really is all about messaging. And Andrew, you're absolutely right. If you ask most people who live around me if they're left or they're right, they're going to say right. But if you start talking to them about specific issues, they are way lefter than they think they are. You know what I'm saying?
And that's because that whole thing is non-existent anymore.
Yes.
Those boundaries have been eliminated.
It's created to keep us divided. It's a construct to keep people divided and in their camps and on a team, so that they're fighting amongst themselves instead of dealing with the real issue, which is the oligarchic government that's oppressing us.
Because even now, like with the GameStop thing, the capitalist class are now revealing themselves as communistic socialists that want to control the distribution of money rather than allow competition.
And the Reddit users that went after Wall Street are on the left and they're on the right, and they all work together to get something done. And it was great. And the left and the right were cheering them on.
And it's not even over. It's just beginning. Like, and it's still January of 2021.
Occupy the SEC.
I still say occupy
headquarters. Occupy Wall Street.
Well, see, here's the thing
that's going on tomorrow. It's the Reoccupy Wall Street, hosted by the Young Republican Club, which is a sentence. I may be covering that. If I can plug. Follow at News Dive Radio on Instagram, because I'm forcing myself to go out into the cold, which I hate, to document some of that. So that's
what I'm saying. There are people on the left who are cheering that on and organizing protests, and there are people on the right who are cheering that on and organizing protests. Like, this is an issue that brings people together, and it should be. It's post-partisan. It's very much like Julian Assange. It's post-partisan. It does not matter what team you belong to. This affects you, and we can put aside our other differences and come together to make a difference, because we need those numbers. They're too powerful. It cannot just be this one little camp trying to go up against Wall Street. It has to be everybody. It has to be.
And there has to be an education effort about COINTELPRO and JTRIG and the effects of the intelligence community on movements like this, because that's going to be the first thing that happens, right? Because you're already on this narrow ground fighting a semi-populist entity, Robin Hood, that has literally funded the fucking Treasury Secretary.
Yeah.
Well, I also think too many people don't realize you can disagree and still talk to people. Like, that's another thing where it's like disagreeing does not have to mean.
Oh, you go straight to hell right now, Sam.
God, what are you, a Nazi collaborator?
It's better when you're like, hey, here's where we're different. Here's where we're the same. Let's hash it out. Like, what are you going to? Like, you have to talk. You have to talk. And that's the thing. Like, it's like I argue.
And listen, I'm not saying
what I disagree with, but I talk about it and I explain why I disagree. And if they don't agree with me at the end, okay, at least I explained why I disagree and I know why they disagree. Like, agreeing internally does nothing.
The problem with this is that when you push back against you can't talk to people who think differently than you, especially if you're on the left. The reason that everybody runs with this narrative and they're trying to pigeonhole you into their little left space as much as possible is because they know that if they were to engage with people on the right, they don't have the backbone and they don't have the will to resist that ideology and stand up for what they believe in. So they assume that you are equally as weak as they are, and that you would compromise all of your principles by engaging in a right-leaning space because they themselves are that weak and fucking feckless and can only exist in their space because of the constant reinforcement and confirmation bias. So when you push back against that, know that you are pushing back against people who don't have a set of principles that they believe in strongly enough to defend and engage with people who think differently than them. What I'm trying to say in a more like academic sort of way is that largely the progressive left is filled with a bunch of beta ass, pussy ass motherfuckers, and that needs to change.
Yes. I absolutely, they're baby brained. It's like they can't even function outside of their echo chamber. If you even introduce a slightly out of the box idea or thought or principle, they freak the fuck out. It is unbelievable. And I wonder how they function in life. Like, do they not understand that the guy that fixes their cars probably a Republican, their doctor's probably a Republican, the guy that lives across the street's probably a Republican? They all think differently than you. Like, maybe you don't know that because maybe you don't engage in political conversations, but you're surrounded by people that disagree with you in the world. Maybe that's scary for them, but that's real life. Like, these people exist and you cannot just will them away. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be around. You're going to have to learn how to like put on your big girl panties and deal with that. Like, it's okay. It's okay that people disagree with you, and it's okay to have conversations with them. It's 100% okay. I do it all the time.
My big girl panties are satin and crotchless.
Are they crotchless? Now that's nice. You're a freak, homie.
No.
But you guys, I live in small town Ohio. I am surrounded by Trump voters. Surrounded. Like, they're all over the place. Like, there are people in my, like, within like a mile from where I live who spent like whole ass weekends painting Trump 2020 on the side of their barns. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are Trump supporters. And are they people that I would invite to my house for a party? Probably not. But are they Nazis and white supremacists? No. They're like everyday average people who have been propagandized to be mad at the wrong people and the wrong things. And I'm not going to do them or myself any good by pretending they don't exist or pretending I can't talk to them. How are we supposed to change them? How are we going to change their minds unless we talk, unless we have conversations with people? And I'm not asking, listen, because people say this all the time. I can't believe you're asking like black people to go talk to Nazis. I'm not fucking asking that. I'm not. I'm a white person. I can go into white spaces with people who have racist opinions and talk to them. And that is my duty as a white person.
Add, like, because people, I feel like it's another thing where it's like, I agree with you. Like, that the whole thing, it's like one thing when you're like a white person who can talk to like white people who don't support black people. Like, if anything, I think the privileged person to be like, I'm not going to do that, because then it means you're putting it on the black people who face a greater threat to do that. You're putting that on them because someone has to. And
white people need to deal with their own. Like, we need to, that's our mess. That's our mess. Like, go fix your mess. That's not on the black person or a Mexican person or a Asian. That's not on them. That's not on them. It shouldn't be on them. Are there black people? I mean, what's his name? Jimmy Dore just talked to him. Daryl, I'm forgetting his last name. But yes, he's a black man who went and talked to people from the KKK, like not just, white people, but people from the Klan. Yes. And converted them. Well, so it's possible.
The argument I've been seeing a lot of is the idea that fascism, Nazism, it functions in a way where, no, not everyone is an extreme, supporter. It's that you have like, maybe like you get to a point where like 10% of the population are true believers, and then like 80% are just okay, and
petrified to say anything.
Survive is if you have like the 80% who doesn't do anything, and in doing that, they are supporting Nazism. And I feel like people are saying that, but they're having the wrong takeaway. The takeaway shouldn't be that because you need that 80% to be like casually like okay with it for it to function. They say that makes that 80% of the people Nazis because they are effectively supporting the 10% who are genuinely Nazis. But no, the takeaway should be that the 80% is super passive, and so you should not equate them to the Nazis. You should acknowledge that you can have them be an 80% that's on your side, but that's only going to happen if you talk to them. If you don't talk to them, then yeah, they're the 80% that the 10% of people who are Nazis are going to be talking to and bringing over to their side. Like, I feel like people make the argument that because you need that 80% to support a white supremacist ideology, they might as well be white supremacists, when it's like, no, you should have the opposite takeaway. Because you need that 80% to support a white supremacist ideology, you should be making sure that that 80% is not interested in being passive to a white supremacist ideology.
Yes. And the problem is too
Schrodinger's Nazi.
Right. Schroeder.
They're neither a white supremacist nor a not a white supremacist until you open the box and put them in that situation.
Yes.
But really, it's people who are Leni Riefenstahl, who did Hitler's propaganda films. John Pilger interviewed her in the 70s, and he asked her what made them work. And she said what made them work wasn't any kind of orders on high or any kind of directive from command, but exactly what you've just been describing, Sam. And she called the submissive void of the population. So framing it in terms of passivity is 100% accurate, because it is. I mean, it requires no amount of energy spent.
Yes.
Except for what it takes to ignore the negative aspects so that you can continue to just simply try to pay your bills. Yes,
Well,
I
I
know
think
it's bad out. I know it's bad out. I know, but
yes.
I've got.
But here's the thing: people try to equate anybody who voted for Trump with a racist white supremacist, and people voted for Trump for a multitude of reasons. And just because they voted for a racist doesn't make them a racist. People voted for Joe Biden. Are they all racist too? Because people never want to come to that. They never want to admit to that. They're both racist. There was two racist options on the table, like for example, in Ohio. NAFTA destroyed my state. Of course, people are not going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. Of course they're not. This isn't a racist issue. People voted based on what affects them materially. And do some of these people hold casually racist views? Absolutely. Are some of them virulent racists? Absolutely. But they're not all. You cannot equate or put 75 million people in a basket and label them as white supremacists and then toss them to the side. That's not effective. That's not going to help anybody. It's just not.
Well, where's the conversation about how it was the Obama administration Hillary Clinton campaign that picked for Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee in 2006?
Right? Where's the responsibility being for that?
Right. Where is everyone like, oh, Joe Biden's racist, Trump's racist, why would we support either one? They work together. They put him in that position of power. And that's the thing that's always boggled my mind for the last fucking, 8 years now? Is that no one's pointed that out? 5 years now?
Hillary Clinton will still to this day tweet out that Donald Trump's so dangerous. You're the reason he is or was president. Mm-hmm. Where's the responsibility for that? I would like somebody, I call her out for it, but most people don't call them out for that. The Democrats are responsible for Donald Trump ever being president to begin with. The media, where's the responsibility for the media? They gave him $2 billion in free coverage, and where, Morning Joe and Mika are caught on live mic promising to give him softball questions, and they're letting him do call-in interviews, and Chris Hayes shows his empty podium for an hour instead of a Bernie Sanders speech. Where's the responsibility for that?
I think that also brings up a good point. I was watching the Katie Halper show, and they were talking about QAnon. And one thing they talk about is that you now have this idea that you cannot cover QAnon. You cannot cover those conspiracy theories. You cannot cover white supremacists. And you have to actually, deplatform coverage of them, which I forget who points it out on the show, but they point out, it's no, the problem was not that they covered white supremacists. The problem was that they covered them like celebrities, that they did fluff pieces and glamorized them and asked the most softball questions. No, you need to cover these things. They're a thing. They're a genuine force in our country now and really in the world. And you're not going, by ignoring them, you're just going to make them more powerful. What you should do is you shouldn't fluff them up. And that's another problem. There's no responsibility for how fluffing these things up is the problem. what is it? The Facebook's algorithms. It's not that they platformed white supremacists and that getting rid of them will solve the problem. It's that they had a for-profit model which benefited from encouraging white supremacists to become more and more insular, because that benefited Facebook's bottom line. And I feel like it's such an easy thing to reach the conclusion, like, no, the only way at this point we're going to get this done is if we do the reverse of that. The reverse of that is exposing people to the communities that they've been kept away from, and making them less insular, and deplatforming and ignoring the problem. It only keeps them insular. It doesn't do the reverse. I'm getting heated. But it's just such a simple answer. It's annoying that people are reinforcing the problem by not dealing with it, by not treating it as a thing that they really have to confront.
This is why an organization like WikiLeaks is vital for any sort of I don't know, society working towards becoming, as Danny Sherson puts it, an aspirational republic, or if your idea is true communism or true, social, whatever it is you're seeking, if it's along the lines of having an informed society, then you have to have a WikiLeaks. You have to have several, ideally, so
Yes.
that it's not just all on one organization. Ideally, you would have a WikiLeaks exclusively for the financial sector. You would have a WikiLeaks exclusively for criminal justice. You would have a WikiLeaks exclusively for like every aspect of the Mickey Mouse, and it wouldn't be all on like one guy and his team to get all of this information out at enormous personal risk to themselves and their families and everyone in their immediate sphere. And the framing of everything related to speech as right-wing and as fascist is 100% deliberate. And I'm going to stop framing this as Last American and Vagabond and I have speculated that, and I'm going to start framing it as this is reality as I see it, and this is reality as Ryan sees it, and this is reality as a lot of the people that we put this to have agreed with, and that is Donald Trump had to happen. Donald, in order to get us to where we are right now with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris essentially being the figureheads of who is running the country, Donald Trump had to happen. It wasn't that the Democrats fucked up. It wasn't that the media sensationalized negative aspects of his campaign in order to capitalize on the ratings. It was that Donald Trump and his presidency was orchestrated, intentional. Hillary was going to lose. And WikiLeaks helped people understand how these systems work and operate. But they were not responsible for the election of Donald Trump because that was out of their hands, just as it was out of the hands of you and me and everyone else who is here as someone documenting the real-time collapse of the American empire.
Well, I would include that, like, if they had gotten the Podesta emails and chosen not to publish it because they were concerned that it would cause Trump to get elected, how would that not be helping Hillary? Like there's no way you can be a journalist.
You cannot, yeah.
Things and like withhold it without that being the opposite and you choosing a side. It just so happens that a lot of the people who are most of the people going after Assange and WikiLeaks now wanted Hillary to win. But it's either way. if you're making the argument that in publishing the info, they helped get Trump elected, then that inherently includes that if they hadn't published the info, that would have helped Hillary get elected. Like it's a catch-22. I don't know if that's the right term.
Well, and listen, the whole Donald Trump thing, they had to show you a wolf to get you to accept a fox. And now everybody is just so relieved and everything's back to normal and everything's great and everything's fine and we're going to be fine. And Joe Biden's president and he's, oh, look at this. Everything's no. Joe Biden is Donald Trump. He is legislatively very, very, very much going to be just like Donald Trump. He's going to be slightly more polished, but not really because Joe Biden's a dunce. But he will be a little bit nicer and it will be less obvious. But he is absolutely going to fuck all of you over daily, just the same way that Trump did. But you're going to just feel so great about it because Trump's gone and Trump's bad. And so everything's fine now. And that's sad, but that's where we're at.
This is why we need to hammer home as much as possible exactly what's happening to Julian Assange in this moment. There are people who are convinced that they can lobby and appeal to Joe Biden and his administration's better angels. And do that, but also let us try to organize a 500,000 person sit-in at Belmarsh every day for fucking now until they free this guy.
That's really what it's going to take.
100%. Look, we can have all of the intellectual exercises with all of the right people, but until we have a physical force in the streets and where this is taking place, like, you guys, I wish I had my passport. I wish the State Department was not fucking with me because I would already be there. Or I would already be fighting deportation because I went to England with the sole purpose of organizing a massive demonstration at Belmarsh.
Yeah.
You know, like, straight up. But I'm going to do whatever the fuck I can to organize here in the US. 100%. Please, Clovers for Assange, St. Patrick's Day, Washington, D.C. Let's make this shit happen. Every major city, if you can. I'm for it. I'm for it. And in the meantime, let's, get a resurgence of the sentiment and energy around Occupy. Because, look, dude, January is still going on. We've still got a whole nother, almost 24 hours of January left. And it feels like a year has passed. And as Sam was saying, it also feels like 10 minutes have passed.
Yeah.
I mean, because we can't guarantee what's going to happen, and because of the promises that we're getting from the healthcare industry and the surveillance state and the Department of Homeland Security and legislation that's been waiting in the wings to classify all of us as domestic terrorists, we don't know how long we've got. So we need to take as much advantage of the time that we have immediately while we can. 500,000 people need to show up at Belmarsh right the fuck now. 500,000 people need to show up at Google right now. 500,000 people need to show up at their state halls unarmed, please. Or at least not dressed for violence, please. Right.
Yeah, don't let them drag you into that, fams. Don't let them do it. That's what they do. Don't let them drag. You cannot out-violence the state. You cannot.
The most important thing, actually, that got learned on January 6th was a large group of right-wingers realizing that the police are not your friends. And that was literally like the whole takeaway that happened from that is you saw video after video coming out of former veterans being tear gassed.
Yes.
There were January 6th didn't turn into the color revolution as planned with Proud Boys versus Antifa. Like, it didn't turn into that wholesale street slaughter of working class person versus working class person that both have no power. It turned into working class person with no power fighting working class person with a gun at the service of the state.
Yes.
And And since then, the world has just become crazier. And that's a change that most people don't even realize or think about. But there was literally a whole herd of veterans that got corralled and tear gassed and beat by police officers.
I think that January 6th was a huge awakening for the right wing, because I think that they always thought
that would be a great awakening. No, don't.
So seriously though, to everyone
Seriously.
that's ever said where we go one, we go all, it makes me so fucking mad to hear a group say that and then ignore Julian Assange. Like the wholesale just have that not be a point of organizing after a slogan like that. Just fucking like grinds my soul on a fucking like meat shredder. It's terrible.
But I think the right wing has always thought, well, the cops are on our side. Like they're on our team. Like it's fine. And then to be at the Capitol getting their asses kicked by cops all day.
Did you see that video of one of the Patriot dudes like freaking out on a cop?
Oh, the flag, the Blue Lives Matter flag?
No. Where he's like, we have backed you. We have been stood with you every step of the way for this. And right when we need you, this is how you do us and blah, blah, blah.
They're not on your side.
Screaming at him, we are done backing the blue. We are done doing your work for you.
And that's why the propaganda machine came out so hard against Jimmy Dore when he had the Boogaloo Boy on him. It's not because racism and domestic terror. It's because if those two ideologies, the largest group of politically disenfranchised people, come together, that's a victory. And
I love that everybody's trying to make this about, first of all, that guy is not a fascist. You cannot listen to anything that he said. I've never met a fascist who's pro-LGBT, anti-ICE, anti-war. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? Like, could he be lying? Sure, but that's one hell of an act to put on.
I remember reading a little bit about the Boogaloo Boy. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I remember reading a little bit about the Boogaloo Boys during the summer, during Black Lives Matter, because that was when I first started hearing about them. And my understanding, I'm not an expert on them, my understanding is that they are radical libertarian, right?
For the most part. Like,
which
they're not
most. Or wait, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna say it's not like a centralized group. There are like segments of it that are bad people, but for the most part, they are what Magnus said. They have been on the streets, putting their bodies on the line, and working hand in hand with Antifa and BLM. I mean, that's Fiorella and Pasta have seen that on the ground. Ford Fisher has seen that on the ground. And there's all these things like, oh, but online they were organizing. I trust on the ground action more than I trust anything that I see online. Online is very anonymous. You have no idea who you're actually talking to, reading about, whatever. So when I see people, if you're actually in the street and putting your body on the line for BLM, then you're not a fascist. It doesn't work.
Well, I don't think there's a concern because there are Boogaloos who oppose Black Lives Matter, but it was like split down the middle. They had arguments throughout the summer over what to do about Black Lives Matter. And so I think rather than being like, oh, the Boogaloos don't support Black Lives Matter, let's not talk to them, we should acknowledge there are Boogaloos who I'm sure I would disagree with them if we got into like an economic discussion about what to do. But if we're talking about Black Lives Matter, I believe that the guy who was talking about how he supports LGBTQ plus rights and Black Lives Matter, whatever disagreements we may have, I believe he means those things. I would like for Boogaloo Boys who have those views to move. I guess I don't know what the answer would be. Like I want to talk to these people and have them be like, hey, if there are Boogaloo Boys who oppose Black Lives Matter, come talk to me instead. Come talk to the groups that have been supporting them instead. Let's not associate with the ones who oppose Black Lives Matter. And you can't do that if you don't talk to them. So I think this goes back to what I was saying, where it's arguing, disagreeing is good. Disagreeing does not have to mean that you don't have hard conversations, that you don't have heated conversations. It doesn't mean that you block them off. It means you have the conversations, and that's the only way that you reach a common understanding as people. Too many people I think are reducing the idea that yes, we should be aware that there are some Boogaloo boys who are white supremacists, but I don't think that means they're not like the Oath Keepers or like.
Well, and there's a lot of racist people on the left. So what are you talking about?
You know, like the fucking dollar store Chris Robinson that was calling Reverend Annie trash.
Yes,
like
that's
guy.
racist as fuck. Like, you can.
Well,
like,
I got called racist for complaining that we now have I didn't even mention that he was black. I complained about the Secretary of Defense, who happens to be black, talking about how it's racist actually to bomb Arab countries.
Yes, if you support imperialism, you're probably a racist.
Yeah.
You may not know it, but you probably are. If you're okay with brown people getting bombed to hell and back in poor countries, just because it's not you and you have this U.S. exceptionalism, you're probably a low-key racist. And that is prevalent on the left. I mean, it is all over the left. So don't tell me I can't talk to a libertarian who may have some racist leanings, but you're going to go hang out with some leftists who voted for a segregationist. Like, you don't make any sense. You're a hypocrite. And I've had people on the left also say that we can't have conversations with libertarians because we disagree on economics. I don't give a fuck. We have to deal with the oppressive government first, and then we can have a conversation.
This is what I would love to see happen. What I would love to see happen is for every single time some gatekeeping, weak, feckless grifter tells you that you can't have these conversations because you need to look at them and ask them, do you solve the world's problems every time you have a conversation? Do you come to concrete solutions? Do you find determinative answers every time you have a conversation? No, you don't. Why are you assuming that is the goal for this conversation? Why are you assuming that by engaging with somebody that we are making a determination about the future that is etched in stone, that will never be altered in any way, shape, or form? How do you have a conversation with someone that only agrees with you? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, like, there's nothing there. Like, hey, nice day, huh? Yep. All right.
I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. Like, I'm still learning and changing my mind, and new information presents itself, and I'm like, oh, okay, I have to reevaluate. And so I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. So what, do you just want to like sit in a room and talk to yourself? Is that the plan? Is that the goal? Because that's ridiculous. That's infantile. Like, grow up. That's not how the real world works. There are people who disagree. And if you want to have a civilized society, you're going to have difficult conversations. Period.
Well, one thing I would say, actually, I have a two-part, if it's okay, is that one on the economic thing. Like, I'm sort of in the opposite, where it's like, I give a fuck about economics, but that's why I'm arguing. Like, I would say that if I had to say what I am as socialist as you can be. I'm a true believer that's the only way we're going to solve the problems. Now, I have friends who are libertarian, who are like, you are going to be like getting rid of everyone's rights if you push for socialism. The free market is the only way that we can have true freedom. Obviously, I think that that's wrong. And I have had some of the most heated arguments of my life trying to explain to them where I'm coming from and them trying to explain where they're coming from. And they are not socialists and I'm not libertarian, but I can definitely say that I am able to get along with them way more than I ever thought of and agree with them on certain things more than I ever thought of. And the flip side of that is that I have watched them actively move economically or socially left from me arguing with them very passionately. It affects it. That is how you move people. So if you disagree with an economic ideology, good. Explain why you disagree. Hear out why they disagree. And the worst thing that happens is that you're friendlier to someone who you may get shit for being friendlier with, and odds are they will be friendlier to your ideas and be more susceptible to your ideas. Not that I think the idea should be like, oh, convert everyone to socialism, but if we're making the argument for people who are like, you can't talk to them because they don't support socialism, or say the flip side, you can't talk to them because they don't support, free market capitalism. The way that you maybe get people to support those things is by explaining them to them and giving them the time to explain themselves, because they're not going to listen to you if you don't listen to them. And I also want to say, on the flip side, I'm gonna exploit the identity a little bit. Like I have Asperger's, but a part of my brain that is supposed to easily have conversations with people who disagree with me, it's not there. I have to put in so much extra effort. So it's also just such an annoying thing when you have people who don't have that, who have never had to necessarily struggle being like, there's no point. It's people don't change. It's like, I am usually giving myself like the meanest headaches and getting rid of all of my energy for the day in an hour just to try to get someone so far from me to, and again, I'm sorry I'm yelling and getting angry, but like I put so much effort into people I never, expect that they're going to agree with me, but like, who knows, maybe they will. I put so much effort in, and usually it does make a difference. So for people to be like, how could you possibly talk to these people? It's because I put in so much effort and it works. You can try it and you can see the results.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And listen, it's not always going to work, and it's not always going to be easy, and it's maybe not for everybody. But it's starting to smear people who are attempting to make that effort and labeling them as enemies or as fascists or as Nazis or Nazi collaborators or what. It's so dumb. It's juvenile.
It's so transparent that they're threatened, and their grip is threatened by these conversations taking place. And I think that, like, the people were talking about December of 2020 like it was the great unmasking, and I support that concept. I do, because it helps, I think, broaden a lot of conversations. And you can't stop that. You can't be like, okay, mask off of this particular content creator because they've exposed themselves as a shill on this particular issue. You can't stop there. You can't. If you understand that there's a cottage industry of gatekeeping in the media landscape, assume that that's true on all issues. Assume that if you're seeing a section of the media drop the ball on if you consider Medicare for all to be an important issue, and you feel like there's a segment of the media that has dropped the ball on that has turned in and faced, they're turned to support the establishment on that. What else are they supporting the establishment on? And if you're ready to cancel somebody over Medicare for all, but you're not ready to cancel somebody over Julian Assange, then we need you to look further into what's going on in the world around you. I really don't want to punch down or insult anyone who's late to the game here. And look, man, I spent nearly 5 hours or more on the air on Anonymous Bites Back the other day, and it got heated. It got way more heated in the chat that we were having, on the street, our internal chat for the people who were on the air. It got incredible. There were many points of discontention, and there were a couple of times where people fuck it, I'm out of here, but didn't bail, stuck with it stuck it out, and we all had, you know, so many more points of agreement on so many other issues rather than the couple that we were butting heads with, that like people have to see us disagree and work this shit out. People have to see us have points of contention and have things that we don't support 100%, even with our own friends and our own crew, because it's like people think you can't disagree and still talk to somebody. Like, that's the programming that's going on. And the only way that we're ever going to fucking get anybody on board is if we lead by example. Like, we can talk about it, but if we aren't doing it, we aren't showing that this shit can happen and get worked out and resolved, or at least dropped until a later date because we're focusing on more important shit at the time, you know, then we're not going to see the 500,000 people at Belmarsh. We're not going to see the 500,000 people at you know, Google or Alphabet or fucking YouTube or Robinhood or wherever we all need to be right now. Occupy Bohemian Grove, fuck it, you know. But I mean, like, it's been to the point of lead follower, get out of the fucking way for way too long right now, and I really feel like it's time for people who've been moving on this and actually having momentum on this shit to declaratively say, you know, like, I'm going to go out of my way to have someone on my show that I disagree with just to show you fucks that this can happen. And I'm glad that some of it's happening, but what we're seeing is people coming on to agree with each other about specific things.
Mm-hmm.
And rad, dude, let's do that, but let's also find out where we disagree and show people how we can have grown-up conversations while we disagree.
Yeah, we just did that actually on Facts on the Ground with Awkward. He very much disagrees with me on he's a Joe Biden voter. He thinks Trump voters are racist, but he voted for Joe Biden. And we had a grown-up conversation where we kind of disagreed. We didn't yell at each other. We just had a disagreement, and then we moved on. It wasn't that hard. It really wasn't. He's a great dude. He's doing great work on police brutality and abolishment of police and defunding movements all across the country. And I totally 100% respect his work and support his work, but we just disagreed on that, and that's okay. We can have a little bit of a disagreement and express our points of view, and maybe he came away with something that he didn't think of before, and maybe I came away with something that I didn't think of before, and that's just the start. These conversations aren't like one and dones. It's something you have to continue. It's like, you know, when I have conversations with people that don't agree with me, it's not like I convince them on day one to support Julian Assange. No, I have to keep going back and keep showing them over and over again that this is why it's important. And sometimes it takes a while, and that's okay. It's worth the work. It really is.
On that note, do we want to start wrapping? It's about 3.
Yes, I have lots of things to do.
So, Sam, I would like to thank you for joining us. If you could, please let people know where they can find you and where they can find your work.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. So my Twitter handle is @SamInTheCan, and I'm on hiatus, but I have a friend who's like retweeting things that I write or whatnot, and in my bio on that account, you can click on all the links where you can find more stuff about me. And then my podcast is @Newsdive Radio. And what we try to do is it sort of assumes an apolitical audience and sort of tries to introduce consequential topics and issues in journalism to people who wouldn't watch the show, people who like don't really know what's going on. So I really encourage people to share that for like, if you have someone who they're not immediately going to necessarily be supporting Assange or caring about foreign policy, but you may want to plant the seeds, check out our work. Support it there at Newsdive Radio. So yeah, and again, thank you guys so much for having me. I love the work you do, so it really does mean a lot that you guys invited me on.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, man, and thank you for joining us in DC as well.
Absolutely, thanks for hosting it.
My name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter @AndrewZigman. You can find us on Twitter @action_4Assange. You can find information about us on our website, actionforassange.com. A bunch of old call to actions on there that are still super relevant. And I just want to thank everybody for watching. I really appreciate everybody that tunes in.
And I'm Misty Winston. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I have another show called Facts on the Ground with my friend Jesse. We are actually going to be interviewing Magnus tonight, the Boogaloo Boy. So I'm interested to talk to him. I'm not going to pull any punches with him. I'm going to ask him some tough shit, and he's ready for that. But you know, I'm just interested in learning more about him as a person, not so much Boogaloo Boys. I hate groups and labels and all that shit. It always gets co-opted. Labels and like organizations, BLM's been co-opted. All that shit gets co-opted. So I find him interesting. So I'm interested to see what he has to say. But that'll probably be posted maybe later this weekend. But we are also on the Rockfin. You should definitely check out that because YouTube's probably not going to be very friendly to us for very long. So yeah, thanks everybody in the chat. You guys know I love you. Thanks Sam for coming on. We really do love your work. And you know, I try to help boost as much as I can because we need to support independent media. So yeah, if you can support independent media, even if it just means retweeting somebody's link, that's helpful. It's the only way we can fight back against the propaganda. And I think that's it. Maybe? I don't know. Sounds good.
You don't have Jesse here to do your clothes for you.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
kind of lost. I don't have a man here to finish my shit for me.
Oh, so you're not racist anymore. Now you're also a misogynist.
Well, see, these guys like to talk for me a lot. So yeah, it's happened a couple of times now.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, it is fucked up. You've done it, Andrew. You're fucked up.
My name's Steve Poikin, and I have a show called Slow News Day, which you should be watching on the Rockfin, because that's where we'll be when YouTube yanks us. Which, again, man, every day that I have a YouTube channel, I am amazed. I'm just absolutely amazed because we're not playing the let's not talk about the things that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube game. Like, we're just flat out not talking about everything we normally talk about. I did just have to reschedule with Vanessa Beeley, so I'm trying to scramble for a guest for tomorrow. Go bug Adam Kokesh and tell him that you want to see him back on.
I can text. I'll shoot him a message.
Not you.
No, Andrew, don't do it. Because he'll shoot like 74 messages.
I already hit up Adam. I did. But at any rate, man, there's a bunch of really good things going on with the show, and I've got some incredible people that are lined up. Had a fantastic rabbit hole conversation with Jared Beck last week that if you haven't seen it, man, go watch that. I get so much hate when I have Jared on. Yeah. Like, people that don't watch my show pop out of the woodwork to be like, fuck you for having Jared Beck on. You know, it's hilarious, dude. It is. It cracks.
You're a tandem in your comment section.
In here, you know, but like, yeah, I mean, like random fucking people on Twitter will just like do a drive-by, like, fuck you for having Jared Beck on your show. So that's one of the reasons why I keep having him back.
We should have him on more. Fuck.
Right. Well, he's coming back on for a moon landing episode.
Oh,
soon.
finally.
Yeah. We're gonna do that one. What else? I have a website, slownewsdayshow.com. It's got our entire archive on it, which will be fantastic after, you know, we're probably deplatformed for having conversations that we shouldn't with people that we don't necessarily agree with. Yeah, there's a Discord. You should join it. Anything? What am I forgetting? Anything else, Josh? Subscribe to the Rockfin. Endorse the channel on the Rockfin. It's $10 a month. You get everybody else's premium content. I'm about ready to, at least for the next like 18 months or so, take a leave of absence from my job and try and do this shit full time and do like full time organizing. So that's going to be vital. But yeah, thank you, Sam. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you to my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Misty Winston, Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos. And everybody in the chat, we love you guys. We can't do this without you. Seriously think about St. Patrick's Day, Clovers for Assange. I'm 100% on making this happen. So
I'm in.
We'll talk about this more. We'll get something officially put together, an announcement made, and unfortunately, likely another GoFundMe or something along those lines. But keep that in the back of your mind. If you can think of any way we can make this just memorable, hit me up. Happy to talk ideas. Until next time, guys, good luck to us all.